Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the second Filipino Food Chat hosted by Filipino Food Crawl. Very happy that we have Clang Garcia here, an expert on Philippine regional cuisines and gastronomic experiences. And of course, Bettina, who hosted the first Filipino Food Chat back in January. So thank you. I guess just to get through a couple of things before we dive in, we're recording the chat so we can make it available to others who have bought the ticket but can't join tonight, and also for others who want to to learn from this chat. So we're gonna post it on our socials over the weekend. I hope that's fine. If we can all just kind of like give a thumbs up that it's okay to be recorded. Yeah, if you could, thank you. Um, Next is if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. To give some order for the evening, first we're going to have about 15, 20-minute chat between Clang and Bettina. And then afterwards, we'll open the floor for questions. And it could be a free-flowing chat. I think we have a more kind of like intimate group. So, we can either turn on your videos, you can just shout out your answer, or if you want me to read your question on the chat, that's fine too. Other thing is, what I have here. Yeah, I think that's we're in a good spot to start. But I guess just a quick backstory. The reason why I organized this chat on regional cuisines is precisely because I kind of give myself a rating of 1 when it comes to what I know about Philippine regional cuisines. Growing up in Manila, I had a very limited view or experience of dishes outside of Manila. It was all just focused on Philippine cuisine. Ironically, once I moved out of Manila and I moved to the States, that's when I started having this, a stronger interest to learn more. So I guess as much as I am a host of tonight's chat, I'm actually also a guest. I'm more of a guest, and I'm very excited to just learn more from Clang and Bettina. Um, and yeah, I think with that we can. Oh, one more thing. We also acknowledge that the vantage points of the audience tonight will be coming from very different places. Some are in the Philippines, and some are in the States. So the way we view Philippine cuisine would be slightly different depending on how we're influenced when we were raised. So we acknowledge that, and we hopefully can unpack some of the nuances of these differing perspectives as we talk about the food. So yeah, without further ado, I'll turn over the floor to Clang and Bettina, and yeah, take it away.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I guess we can both, we can both, I guess, just introduce ourselves and sort of explain the work that we do, if that works for you. I can start, so I'm Bettina Makalintal. I'm a food and culture writer at Vice. I've written a decent amount about Filipino food, but also sort of the role of Filipino and other Asian American foods in the United States. And I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. And yeah, Clang, I'd love to hear a little bit more about sort of the work that you do and how you got into it.
Yes. Hi, Bettina and everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Filipino Food Crawl chat. So my name is Clang Garcia. I'm an inbound tour operator. I've been crafting creative experiences for international travelers. And I've been developing a culinary travel menu because, I'm very young in the field of tour operations as opposed to some companies that's been in the business for over 50 years. But then I saw that there has to be defining experiences for travelers. So I traveled around the Philippines to research and do product development. So, and then as I researched, that's where everything happened. It just unfolded before me, and it kept me also. I just kept on developing. So I'm the one who offers a different dimension of traveling around the Philippines that deep dives into the soul of Filipino food and cultures. And in fact, I've handled for the book, I Am a Filipino. I'm the one who curated the Philippine journeys for that.
Is that the book by Nicole Ponseca?
Nicole Fonseca and Chef Miguel Trinidad.
Oh, great. And so, yeah, Clang, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about like, do your travels take you just all over the Philippines, to sort of all regions?
Yes. So in the Philippines, I can honestly say that I'm the only one who can connect Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So when it comes to learning about Filipino foods and culture. So when I promoted my book in the United States before, I didn't know what's the who will be my market, who am I going to attract until I realized I have magnetized second generations of Filipino chefs and restaurateurs who wants to learn their roots through food. So they started coming in. So I've handled quite a few personalities.
Mhm. And so, what made you realize that sort of food was the way that you wanted to the way that you could understand all of these different provinces and sort of regional traditions?
Actually, I have vivid memories of growing up in the kitchen of my grandmother, and when the time comes, I have to be by myself. I realize there's a part of me is missing the flavors that I grew up with. It's not something that I can easily find anywhere else. And I had the opportunity to work with the in-flight magazine of Philippine Airlines. That's my first job. So it gave me the exposure to travel around the Philippines. And it's only in travel that you can learn. So the travel has been my biggest university, and the people that I come across with. And actually, the food that you learn, it's not really in the finest restaurants. You'll find it in the palenque, in the carinderia, and to the most humble people, from the farmers and all that. So they were my teachers.
Mhm.
And the moment that you connect with people, it the moment you connect with it, it will move you, it will change you in a different way, and you'll never go back as the same person again, and you just want to help, you just want to share what you've discovered. So that's why I said it's only through experiences that I can share this, and now
Mhm.
documentation.
Yeah. And so, did you grow up in Manila?
Yes, I grew up in Manila. My grandmother used to run a carinderia. So it was a joy to tag along with her. So I've seen the entire process, going to the palenque, buying the right ingredients and preparing, cooking in the kitchen, and then serving it in the carinderia. And yeah, so basically I enjoyed that process, and I've seen the sense of, because at the time, when I was young, when you say carinderia, when she served sinigang, it's the actual seasonal ingredient like tamarind, singkamas. But now it's all powdered, and even in the Philippines, you can never taste real sinigang using the real ingredients. It's always powdered. So I think part of our cuisine has been violated by commercialism.
Do you remember when you sort of realized that the Filipino food you knew was just sort of the food of Manila? Like, do you remember, was there a moment you sort of had like a realization about that?
Yes, when I started to travel to different places, that's why I said, that's why I advocate travel to learn more. Because, we have the usual adobo, sinigang, kare-kare. And then suddenly you go uh, to Muslim Mindanao, the food changes. You have that, different spices. And if you go to Bicol, suddenly you have that coconut spice nut adventures. And if you go to Bulacan, there's so much sweetness. And if you go to the northern area, they have bitter notes. So it's nice to be able to understand the beauty of the diversity of Filipino foods.
Mhm. Yeah, so like one thing I think is really interesting because because you're based in Manila and I'm in New York and I've grown up in the United States, is that we are, and like RAF is very involved in this, where we're pushing this Filipino food movement and we're heralding Filipino food here. But sort of as we do that, because we sort of have to like introduce Filipino food, we are sort of putting forth just a very specific idea of Filipino food. And as I've gotten older and I've sort of learned more, I like realized that mostly a lot of what we're talking about is like these foods of Manila, and is like sort of these fiesta foods and these sort of middle class to upper middle class foods. And I think it's been interesting because I think we have made like really big strides in sort of the presence of Filipino food in the United States. But at the same time, I've been trying to keep an eye out, like, is there a restaurant that's getting attention here that's like doing like Pampangan food, or is sort of specifically saying that their food, is tied to a province or a region. And I don't think that's really sort of entered like the broad consciousness here.
Mm.
So I think it's really interesting that you've sort of, that you're sort of getting this, in the Philippines, you're getting sort of a growing interest in these like provinces and like these sort of more specific regional traditions. I'd love to see Filipino food sort of make that transition here as well.
Mhm.
One thing I'd love to talk to like sort of, get your insight on is like, what do you think we can like learn about Philippine culture more broadly by focusing on sort of regional cuisines or cooking practices? Like, what can that sort of tell us about Philippine culture more broadly?
Well, in terms of that, I think it's more of the relationship. We have that sense of community. We have that bayanihan. And normally, if you cook for occasions, you can never find one Filipino in a kitchen. It's always surrounded by family and friends. And the same here during fiestas, when they prepare, you gather the entire barangay and you come together as a family. So it's nice to be able to look into that. Probably, I know there are so many, as you mentioned, there's so many second generation of Philams. I think we can start tracing our roots by talking to our grandparents. What are the foods that you used to cook? Are you able to taste that at the moment? So it's a nice bonding moment to be able to gather that family together and document and bring in the younger generation. And then let that be your legacy, because for me, the only way to learn is to learn the food, cook the food, and share, eat it together, and feast together. Because it's nice to document, but if you cannot share it, then it's nothing. And I think that's the soul of the Filipino food and culture. Coming together over festive dishes.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I think that like that's always something that I feel like everyone is always like, I should have done that sooner, like started talking to like our grandparents and even our parents about foods, because, it's like it's just that opportunity is sort of always going away. Um, I would love to sort of get your thoughts, because I know when we were talking sort of through how like this conversation is like, the idea that like talking about Philippine food, even in a regional sense, is sort of, maybe the wrong word. I'd love to get sort of your thoughts on like what, how regional is still too broad, and like how maybe provinces are a better way to look at things.
Right. There are so many, articles and description that Filipino food is regional. But when I started to travel consciously to learn about Filipino food, it's not regional, because region is too broad. It's actually more of provincial and categorized also by ethno-linguistic groups. Because one time when I went to one province, for example, the province of Samar, if you cross another barangay, if you go to another municipality, suddenly the food changes. It cannot be categorized, because it's not just a food. You also have to factor in the geography, the history, and then the culture of those particular destinations. So if you live in the coastal area and then suddenly the province has a mountain area, the food of those people are not the same. So it's not, you cannot generalize it as regions. And then the people from the plains has different type of foods and culture.
Mhm. So is the ethno linguistic groups like sort of a better marker of like
Mm,
the sort of where people are living?
correct. So when I told myself I want to do a book about Filipino foods, no, since 2016, but then I still can't figure it out, not until I said, because there's like I have already collected a plethora of informations and inventory of heritage dishes. But then I said something is missing. So I said I have to start and trace my roots. And the only way to do that is to connect myself with the different ethno-linguistic groups. And it was a very moving experience, because they're the bearers of ancient traditions. Because what we have now may have been influenced by one way or another, but for them, they stay true. And most of them, nothing has been cut in terms of cooking techniques, flavors, and the dishes. It's still very much the same.
Do you have you found that like are these like ethno linguistic groups like are they sort of seeing like younger people leaving their areas and going to the city? Or are they still sort of able to keep like a growing, population in their regional areas?
Well, most of them, they remain where they are, but they're also migrating in different parts of the Philippines. And I remember meeting some people who are still doing the chant, and then the Lola, the elder one who passed on recently, is not able to adapt because now the young generation sometimes are not interested because the younger generation are now able to work, go to college, and they don't want to go back anymore. So it's actually fading. So the way to go now is just to document and find a way to keep them.
Mhm. And so one thing that, we sort of have framed this discussion sort of about like these unsung dishes. Why do
Mhm.
you think these dishes and like cuisines have been unsung? Like what's the reason for that? And how can we sort of, is that changing now?
Mm. I think the unsung dishes, based on my travels, are basically served in the privacy of homes. So you have to be invited in the privacy of homes because these are like heirloom recipes passed on from one generation to another. And then some of them are like, as I said, you have bearers of traditions. They are the silent heroes of the kitchens. And some of them are the ethno-linguistic groups. Some of them are like the most humble people. So they're not part of the mainstream that when you go to a particular day, say, oh, you eat in a restaurant to get this. No, I think the unsung dishes are enjoyed in the privacy of homes and to the woods where you see the different ethno-linguistic groups. And for you to be able to connect to them, you have to be able to establish a rapport because you're like a stranger coming into a different space.
Yeah, how do you navigate that? Like especially is it like are you working with communities whose like language you don't understand? Like how are you sort of connecting with them?
Yeah. Well, I actually have to do it properly. I have to connect with different local government units, and then there's an Indigenous People Association to make sure that the act will be duly respected. And I'm sorry, I got lost. What was the question again?
Oh no, I was just wondering sort of how do you
Ah, yeah,
that
to navigate, right, right. Mm-mm. And
yeah.
then, when you go there, the first time you meet them, they're quite aloof, probably because you're a stranger. So sometimes I don't have to talk. All I have to do is observe their way of life. I just have to listen to them, and then I realize once you eat together, everything changes. When they start feeding you, then suddenly you become connected over food. So that's what I do. And then sometimes I have interpreters, but most of them can actually speak Tagalog, or if
Oh,
not, we can pick somewhere.
mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. And so do you
Because
think
I just want to add, the reason why I mentioned this because we have 7,641 islands. You have over 100 languages. You have more than 70 ethno-linguistic groups around the Philippines. So there's so much to cover, and I don't think I can do that in my lifetime. So I'll just cover whatever it is that I can.
yeah, that makes sense. Are most of the people who come on your tours like from the Philippines or are they from other countries?
The one that I handled are mostly from different countries, and normally they are cerebral foodies. They will not just come here for food trip or purposes. They want to learn, and most of them are like um, authors, filmmakers, and I'm happy that I was able to become a channel in providing contents for the books like the Brian Toss, Milk Your Pigs, Violet and Gold, and now we have Phil Argentinian chef Cristina Sunay. I curated her Philippine photo shoot. So marami, there's so much, and I think it will just explode one day. I mean, I am a Filipino. I also curated the entire Philippine photo shoot. So one step at a time, I think we will dominate the world. And it's not just about the food, but we have silent influencers, and these are the OFWs, who are like feeding, preparing foods for different people of the world.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so great that you've been able to work for those projects. Because one thing I was going to say was that, like, I think that it's been very like it's been very, very like nice to see from like the that there are these books coming out of the Philippines that are talking about, the foods of different provinces and different regions, and that are actually sort of making those written down, like culinary history is actually preserved. Like I really liked Angelo
Mhm.
Comste's, also Filipino as well, just because I thought that was so interesting to see this
Mm,
book
yes.
to, to like, to completely frame the entire project around things that we were not recognizing a lot. And like I loved seeing, all of these sort of the mentions in I Am Filipino that really were sort of like talking about the different ways that we, might not know about Filipino food. So it's great that you sort of enabled those. So what do you see sort of as the steps we can take to preserve these provincial and regional Philippine cuisines?
Well, it's more of acknowledging, and then for me, it's documentation, cooking them. For example, if you have the book of Angela Pomsey, try cooking it. And then is this something that you like? Then probably you can share it with your friends or with your immediate family, and then let that start the conversation. That maybe you have some, family recipes that you can also try to work on, and then. Um, in this world we are blessed to be born in the emergence of social media, then suddenly you can easily post. Those are just the simple efforts that you can that we can all do, and then curate it properly. And then we have this people power community, I mean culture, so we can make social media explode by using the topic of Filipino foods and cultures.
Yeah, I see so much like lumpia and adobo like on my social media feeds, right? But I
Yeah.
recently I've been seeing some new dishes that I wasn't familiar with. Like I hadn't ever tried like kulawong talong before,
Yeah.
which is like
Yes.
sort of
Yeah.
burnt eggplant in like coconut milk.
Yeah.
And I was like, and so I tried it and I really liked it, and I thought it was, it was such a good example of how social media can actually like teach you new things
Right.
about, like, I think I know Filipino food, and even that, it was new to me, and I thought that was great to be able to get that, like, you know dialogue online.
I have some photos. If you want, I can share some of them
Yeah, that'd be
because
great.
Yeah, go ahead, Clang.
yeah, because I know Raf gave us time to work on, because we're only until now we still have Q&A.
No, yeah, just go
Can you
ahead.
see?
No
Can you?
worries.
Okay, so that's the. So this is the one that I want to share with you. So I want to start my story with one particular ethno-linguistic group. So they're called the Blaans. They're from Sarangani province of Soxargen region. So on the left side, you will see this is the culture where they use the whatever it is that they can find in their surrounding. That's their cooking vessels, and those are their ingredients. And if you look at the cooking techniques, the the bamboo is not directly placed on torch ember. So in Tagalog, we call it darang. You just allow it to be kissed by the fire. And then the dish is called alnote anok disman. So which is basically, alnote is the pit of the banana, and then anok is manok, and then dismat is this one. It's the anahaw leaves. When I tried it, I was so fascinated because they're pouring the broth, and it doesn't drip at all. So we finished everything. So this is the beauty of connecting with our roots, because you'll know what is the tradition, and even the way they dress up, and still very much the same, because we were like one of the finest weavers in the world. So this is just one of them. And then this is what Bettina mentioned, the Kulawo from Laguna and Quezon dishes, Quezon provinces. So this is basically burning the coconut. So you have the torch embers, you place that on grated coconuts. And then for the kulawa in particular, it's tamed by vinegar. You tame the flame by vinegar, allow it to cool, and then you squeeze it manually. You squeeze it manually, and then what you have is the smoked coconut vinaigrette. And then you can put that on eggplant or banana heart. Normally, they eat that with a lot of rice, But for me, I like eating it. I'm actually drinking the vinaigrette. It's so beautiful. But now they're able to make it into canapes. They have biscocho and then pair it. So it's a beautiful combination of sweet, sour, and then crunchy. And then this one, it's the same cooking technique with, it's the same technique with bicol. So it's called tinutungan from the root word tutong. Basically, you burn, it's the same kind of burning, but they don't tame it with vinegar. So the extracted smoked coconut cream is actually cooked. They cook it to simmer, chicken. They include that in their dinuguan. When I tried tinutungang dinuguan, I'll never eat the dinuguan I know anymore. So it creates a beautiful medley of flavor. It's charged, and I said, "Oh my gosh, this." It makes me feel so proud. I said, "Oh my gosh, we have all these dishes." And then this one, when I went to Sulu, you have the tausug. So their burning of coconut is different. This one, it has to be really burned. So you have the flesh of the coconut meat. And I remember Chef Miguel Trinidad of the jeepney sent me an email. Clang, I burnt the coconut. I put it on a blender, and it's not black. I said, no, it should not be. It should be really, really black, that when you touch it, it will just crumble into your hands. And then once you have that paste, so this is the pamapa itum. It's being sold in the market. It's very black, but it has secret spices. They use, in the Philippines in general, we use fresh spices. You have the ginger, you have the lemongrass, you have the onions. So you pound that all together and you have this. And once you have that paste, you can mix that with different dishes. So this is Junai. That's how their rice looks like. And then you just pair it with egg. That's a typical breakfast. And you have the pianggang manok. This one you have like green, colored. It's tainted with green because they added turmeric. They boil it with turmeric and coconut cream. So the beautiful color comes out like that. So this one is tiyula itum. Tiyula, it's like tinola. And then itum is black. So this is made of lamb. And then you just boil the pamapa itum, and then you have this wonderful, wonderful flavor. And I remember serving that to some of the Philam chefs that visited, and they were so impressed because I said, if America has Cajun chicken, we have pamapa itum. So it was tasted by Alvin Kailan, Lasa, Chef Olalia. And then we have there in Maguindanao province in Bangsamoro region, the Tinapayan. So it's not tinapay, because I think the word comes because probably I'm just thinking that probably tinapay has yeast. So tinapayan is a way of fermentation. It's a way of fermenting the rice and then the fish. In Pampanga, when they ferment rice, the buro, this actually buro, they add salt and then fish. But this one, they add the salt and then the yeast powder from rice, and they add galangal and lemongrass and then garlic. So that's the difference. Done. This one in the lower left part, you'll see a typical vendor selling that. This is very typical in Maguindanao. But what I want you to look into is that this bottle of oil. This bottle of oil is the one used in cooking the tinapayan. This one is called Lana Tidtu, which is basically coconut cream. Coconut cream is kakanggata, the pressed coconut. And then you simmer it for a long period of time until you see the oil surface. That's what they use in cooking it. And that's it's not a beautiful dish, but it's oozing with so much flavor. There's funkiness, there's that creaminess from the coconut oil. And then, wait, my next slide is, so this one, it's the hibok-hibok from the municipality of Taytay in Rizal province. So this one, if you're familiar with mochi, it's the same. It has because we have, I'm now presenting some influences that we indigenize. So this mochi, you have the mongo, sweet mongo paste filled with that. And then they top it with gata. yung ginataan, the one that we use is the sweetened coconut cream. And then after that, you sprinkle it with latik. If you're familiar with the latik, if you cook the coconut cream for a long period of time, then that's the coconut curds. And then this one is tamalos, is mind blowing for me because we know tamales. For them, they call it tamalos. I've documented different tamales in different parts of the Philippines. This one blew my mind. For me, this is like the festival of tamales in the Philippines. Because when I saw the ingredient, they use, this one is made of, the original recipe is made of ground rice. But now they're just using the lumpia wrapper, the lumpia wrapper, which is basically made of ground rice. So it's maybe easier to do. The one that blew my mind is the use of the word pipian. Pipian in Mexico, it's a type of mole. And this one, that's what they call the sauce. They call it pipian sauce, which is the spiced coconut paste. And suddenly the tamales that I know changes. And then they use blocks of pork. They use chunks of pork, which they adobo in using vinegar and water and all that. And then you have all these beautiful medley of flavors. And it's very fascinating. So this one is in Catbalogan City within the province of Samar. So as I mentioned, in different municipalities, you have many different gems. And this one, you can only taste it if you know the family. So that ends my presentation. Am I on time, Raf?
Great, Bettina.
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just gonna say all of these look so good. And like I love the way that like so much of the naming has you can see the links to like, instead of like manok, the one was like manok, and this tamalos one. Do you like are there resources for learning about these types of dishes or getting recipes for them online, Clang, that you know of?
I'm working on a book on the summer, just for the province of summer. And then I'm going to cover like, for now, I don't know if you can find it online, but maybe we'll make it available. We'll make it available. But you can always have a recipe. For me, the star is the peanut paste, the pipian. It can stand on its own. I can just eat it. But the medley of flavors from the spice, the acidity from the pork chunks, and then the texture is very nice. So basically what I'm doing right now is documentation of recipes.
Yeah, no, it's amazing to hear about all of these things. The thing that seems like sort of difficult is it's sort of like it seems like, unless you're you and you're sort of doing all of the on the ground research constantly, it's like, if you're like me, you sort of don't know what to look for online to find these things. But one thing I was interested in was you mentioned like that like Filipino mochi almost, and you said that shows sort of the things that we've indigenized. Can you sort of explain sort of like what ingredients in that are examples of things that we've indigenized?
Okay. In China, I think it's called Tanyan. They always have this mochi during Lantern Festival or special occasion. Because I think it has something to do with trading with China. And then we have Chinese immigrants. So we already have rice, but I think for us, we only adopt what we like. And then we discharge whatever we don't like. It doesn't mean that just because they landed in our shores, we adopt everything. We only like what's pleasing to the palate. So for that, they also have that mochi. But for us, our version of the mung bean paste is actually sweet. And I think the indigenization is the ginataan. We have the ginataan culture. Can you imagine we made a sauce out of that? So you only have a mochi, but for us, we have the sauce. I think we love sauce. Filipinos love sauce. And then you add the latik on top. And I remember one lady mentioned to me, there's another family who makes a different mention. The coconut oil from the latik, they even drizzle it with that. So I think that's the indigenization of Filipino food.
Yeah, that's amazing. That sounds so good.
Awesome. I think, Bettina, we can open it up now for Q&A. Um, Yeah, anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Clang or Bettina, or any comment about the presentation? I know there were a couple who mentioned, yeah, the mochi, the Filipino mochi.
From Taiwan.
Yeah, and also I think Clang, you mentioned this oil that they cook, and whatever is the byproduct at the top, they bottle it.
Yeah.
There was one question,
Latik.
I think it was Didi. Yeah, Didi. She was asking, is that the byproduct of latik?
Yes, the coconut curd. So basically, when you say coconut cream, it has no, it's a pure coconut cream, no water. So once you boil that, and then it turns into an oil, and then you develop like the byproduct, which is like the coconut curd. So that's what you put on top. We call it's budbud.
Nice. Any other questions? Feel free to turn on your video or unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes. There's so much to
Thank
discover. Yeah, you're right. We need the online recipes, or videos for people to follow.
Yeah, hi, I'm Didi.
Hi, Didi.
Hi, Clang. Thank you for gracing us with your presence and knowledge. My question is, oh, so I'm Filipino. Um, I'm in America. Don't consider myself Filipino American because I'm not American. And I've traveled a lot around the Philippines. I've been privileged to have done so. And I think one of the carriers of culture, aside from, the family recipes and all, are these specialty vendors. And like, for example, you have famous puto calasiao
Mhm.
makers in Pangasinan, and like bibingkang Bisaya in Cebu and other
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
regions. And I guess my question is, given like the uh, colonial thinking, as well as the influences more so now because of the internet, how is the is it is there still hope of continuing on, I guess, the legacy of these kinds of um, vendors, which I know, like, is there a um, like, are people not as interested anymore in, like, eating these things, or even like for the family to continue the business for the sake of preserve, aside from, of course, livelihood, but preserving, the culture.
Yeah. Thank you, Didi, for your question and for your inputs. Yes. Well, basically, the way to survive all this is to patronize the products. And the Filipino palate, you will always have that flavors, and you will always patronize. You will always look for it. It's just that I think, and right now the government in the Philippines, they're now helping all these small entrepreneurs. We have the Department of Trade of Industry, and I was asked to come on board to become like a consultant for Heritage Food Champion. So things like that. So we're moving into that direction to make sure it's sustained. The business is sustained. So the DTI is now working on that. They're teaching small entrepreneurs to go digital and then have their products available in the different offices of the Department of Trade and Industry. But within the community, they're able to survive well. It's just that the biggest buyers of these products are actually the travelers. But now the tourism industry has collapsed because of the pandemic. So um, the only way to survive is to really help them, reach out to them, ask them to prepare this again. And that's what actually everybody's doing right now. We just have to keep on patronizing all these products and that sustainability, and then make sure that it's passed on to the next generation, because most of them are like old already.
Awesome. We have a
Thank
question
you.
in the chat from Angelica. She asks, you had mentioned, Clang, having really good tinutungan dinuguan. Do you know how that was made?
Hi, Angelica. Do you know how to make dinuguan? If you know how to make dinuguan, basically you just include the coconut cream. You will not change the recipe of your dinuguan. You just have to add the smoked coconut cream. It's funny in Bicol. They have a food pairing for that. Tinutuguan dinuguan is paired with pansit bato. Pansit bato is just a term for a local town, but it's just a plain noodles. It's like pasta. That's what they pour on top. So that's how they eat it. Because in Tagalog, in Manila, normally you pair dinuguan with with puto or with rice. But in Bicol, they pair it with pansit bato. It's like pasta but with brownish sauce.
Clang, I have a question about authenticity and your thoughts about it. So, for example, one of the stops I have on my tour on Filipino Food Crawl is Mama Fina's, and the way they serve their or the way they make their sisig is using pork belly, not the usual Kapampangan style of using mascara and like big ears and cheeks, jowl. And I was wondering if you saw any sorry, let me take a step back. Because of the different style of the Mama Fina sisig, some people say that, oh, that's not real sisig. But if you talk to the owners, they say, no, this is the sisig, and this is how we make it in our province. I believe, if I recall correctly, they're from the Bicol region. So I was wondering, in your travels and in your research, is there also that sentiment of, I guess, differing like perceptions of authenticity between regions in the Philippines, or is it just something that Filipinos or Filipino Americans develop because they're outside of the Philippines?
In the Philippines, I think it's more dominant in the United States, because you have the first generation coming into the restaurant of a third generation. For example, I had when I took Chad Valencia of Lhasa from LA for a tour. you know he grew up there, he studied there, he was under the tutelage of the finest chefs, and his cooking techniques is French. That's how he learned it, but he wants to share his roots. So when people first generation started going there, it's like, that's not the pancit of my grandmother, that's not the adobo. So I think we just have to open our mind that all of us are culture makers, and no one can claim authenticity, because as people travel, as people migrate, as people intermarry, and so does cooking techniques, the palette, the ingredients. So, and the food that we know now will still continuously evolve. As what I have presented earlier, we used to cook boiling. We have no saute process. It's just all boiling. So it's getting richer as we move along. And it's inherently dynamic. And every person is a culture maker. I can make my own version of adobo, and people just have to respect that.
Love that. Any other questions?
So if I may just, if there are no questions. So the coconut cream, actually, one time I was invited for a lunch at Conrad Manila with popular chef Jeremy Leung. He has a Chinese chef, They presented all these gourmet meals. And then at the end of it, there's an ice cream. It's colored gray. It's served with, toasted Parmesan cheese, and then with latte. I went to the chef. I told him, this is a Filipino cooking technique of burning coconut. And then his eyes lit up and said, yes, you're so right. So he made the coconut cream into ice cream. And it's so beautiful in flavor. So once you have that coconut cream, the burnt coconut cream, you can play along with it. You can use it for fish. I've seen one, they use it in carabao meat and all. You can use it to simmer just to add a different dimension in the flavor. The charred flavor is so beautiful, and then the silken texture of the coconut cream.
Nice.
Do you know why that tradition like took off? Like, burning the coconut cream and burning the coconut instead of just using it, fresh?
Actually, I've been researching about that. I still have no answer. But then there's one person from Bicol who said that before there used to be, there's always typhoon in Bicol. So you have like fallen coconut. and then they don't know what to do with it, so they just play with it. And then there's one man that I met from Quezon who said that during World War II, their grandparents escaped to the mountain. And then again, they're like fallen coconuts and they're so hungry. So they created fire and then just burn it. They slice it open. So you have that burnt coconut.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's the version from someone coming from World War II story.
Awesome. I think Manuel has a question.
Oh, you got me. Okay. Give me 1 second.
Hi,
So,
Manuel.
hi, how are you? Excuse me if you already talked about this, but you mentioned earlier that you only find these foods in the palenques and in these neighborhoods, specifically in the areas you don't really find them in fancy restaurants. But often the way a particular dish or a specific regional style of cooking gets wider exposure or becomes canon when they're presented in a fine dining setting or chef-driven restaurants. Certainly that happens. I don't know. I've seen it like in that High on the Hog show in Africa, and it happens like in Peru and places like that, and Brazil. Have you seen? I was just wondering if you've seen any examples of that in Manila, like maybe a kid from that area goes to culinary school, stages at a bunch of places, or works at a cruise ship, and then comes back to Manila or the city, and then sneaks this dish on the menu, or a dish, or a whole regional style on fancy plates.
There are some efforts that are being done in Manila, but I think what is strong is the other way around. So from Filipinos who grew up in the United States,
Right.
they try to preserve their recipes and then create their own rendition that will be palatable to to the present generation. But for me, when I do my tours, I curate the menu and then I teach the cooks on how to present, but I also inculcate creative flair to make it pleasing to the eyes, because people are saying Filipino foods are not pleasant to watch. It's always swimming in oil and all that, but done plated correctly, it can be really wonderful. And I know that when I went to Bangsamoro region, I was so blown away with the flavors. That's not really the flavors that I grew up with, but the layers are are phenomenal. And I remember when I was asked to do a tour for the Phil-Am chefs, I told them I'm gonna do Mindanao cuisine, but I never told them about Bangsamoro, because when they talk about Muslim, I said no, don't put that. But then I pushed it, and then they were so surprised with what they have tasted. And I know there's one chef Cocoy Ventura. He used to work with French Laundry. He's from America and he came here. That's what he's doing now.
Nice. We have another question, Clang, on the chat from Didi. So we do have the chef culture now, but as you mentioned, the stars are the home cooks and these vendors. Given this, the chef celebrity get the attention. Are there ways to bring them, the cooks, home cooks and vendors, into the spotlight, or are they not keen or shy about getting attention?
They're not really, the vendors, they're not much into that, but I remember one time when I was asked to do a presentation, I had to bring someone from Bicol because I want them to become the stars of the program, not the chefs. Because if you're looking for real people, then that's how it can be done. But there are some chefs who have origins from different provinces, and on their own they conduct their research, so they represent these different vendors, different people, and put them in a plate. Because sometimes if you talk to them, those small vendors, they don't really care about that. They're just so concerned with what they have to prepare and sell, and then they're happy with that. No desire for fame or spotlight.
Like for example, in like New York over the pandemic, there were these efforts online to sort of showcase like small businesses that were struggling, especially because of the pandemic. Do you know if there's anyone in Manila or in the Philippines aside from you who's doing a project like that on like Instagram or any social media platform to sort of show off these sort of smaller, maybe less noticed vendors?
I think it's more of individual efforts. So you just have to know if you see some posts and then you just support that. But there's a Philippine Culinary Heritage Movement. We just celebrated the Filipino Food Month. So there are like many interesting discussions that happen. So in the Philippines, I think that's why I know it's growing because the president has already declared April as Philippine Food Month, and it's a month-long celebration. The National Commission for Culture and the Arts are doing special programs, and I also work with them on that. So it's more of informational campaign. So you go to NCCA or Filipino Culinary Heritage Movement. And I'm going to embark on a campaign with the Tourism Promotions Board, and I will start working on that. So starting, I think mid-July, I will start documenting on our social media page. It's called Food Holidays, because the tourism industry has collapsed, and it brought so much tears to everyone. So I'm hoping we can start growing, bringing tourism back through food, because it's the easiest way to seduce travelers to explore the country again through food. So we'll curate all of that. So whatever it is that I shared, so it's going to be the campaign from July to December, and I will still continue to travel and document dishes, and we'll present that online on the social page.
That's great. I'll look forward to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask one.
Okay.
Another one. Yeah, Clang. This might be I guess this is a particular interest to me. I've noticed that there are a lot of new businesses, new businesses popping up that are centered around food boxes. And
Mhm.
the ones that I've seen have exerted quite a lot of effort in curating a box that helps out small and medium enterprises in the Philippines. So helping them standardize their process, making sure that they pass like import standards, and then these prepackaged goods are delivered to basically the U.S. market and even markets outside the U.S., Europe, around Asia, and all that. I was wondering if do you see this trend continuing? Is this something that like have you like with the vendors, or with the home cooks, or with the that you've met, are they venturing into creating more pre-packaged or prepackaged foods that can be sold abroad?
Okay. So I think that one is already the job of the Department of Trade and Industry. There are efforts. Ma'am, I don't know, Mama Sitas. I know there's one from Bicol who are like starting to sell. They already passed, all these, all the permits and regulations. The brand is called Best of Bicol. So they package a laing in a bottle, sinantulan in a bottle. So hopefully that will start to hit the industry. And there's also balo balo, which is the buro. They're already exporting in the United States. I think other seafood market. I think there are like efforts already. I just need to consolidate everything,
Nice.
because it's hard to develop like traditional Filipino foods. But so now with DTI, they're working with the Department of Science and Technology. That's my job pala, no? I mean, that's the brief that I got because I was asked to come on board for the Heritage Food Champion. So the Department of Trade and Industry and Department of Science and Technology are merging to bring Filipino foods to the mainstream. So that's already being studied. Even the tamalos, I presented that to be, even just the pipian sauce to be bottled.
Yeah, actually, what prompted this question is Didi's question earlier about puto kalashao, and I was thinking, yes, they're
Yeah,
okay to get puto kalashao
yeah,
from the Philippines,
right,
picture it in a certain way, prepare it in a certain way that will last, I don't know, maybe a few days in transit, and then land in
right.
dining table
Yes.
in the States. And I think that's like such an amazing experience if we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. Any takers?
Any questions? If you try the burnt coconut, from the tausug, that one is also really, really phenomenal. It's just a simple rice. You just add the pamapa itum and then the paste in the rice. And then you wrap it in banana leaves. That's actually a mobile food. Then you normally see that in the palenque, in a plastic with hard-boiled egg. That's already your meal on its own. And
Awesome.
I think, whatever this is that I presented, so I said, if I'm going to launch my book and then I bring it to the US, I'm going to cook or I'm going to share this. They are going to be the stars. These sample foods will be the star the moment I present it there.
Nice, Clang. You should send a list of all those dishes.
Yes, yes.
Up online and
Okay.
wait for your book to get those recipes.
Yes.
I think this is a good place to wrap up. So thank you so much, everybody. But before I let you go, I just want to share that we were able to raise over $200 for Mad Travel, Make a Difference Travel, and those funds will help indigenous communities in Bataan and Zambales to cope with the economic effects of the pandemic. And actually, the founder, Raf, sent in a short video to thank us, and I'd like to share with you what he sent. So just give me a sec. Let me share my screen. Can you see Raf now?
Yeah.
All right, let me just, yeah.
Hi guys, Raf here from Make a Difference or Mad Travel. Sorry I'm not able to be with you guys today. I have to actually check on our reforestation area in Zambales. That's the place where you guys have generously raised money to help invest in the climate resilience and food security of the Aetas and eventually of our country. I just want to thank you guys on behalf of the community. There's so much going on, but you guys give us a lot of hope. And just to share with you, I'm in Rizal today. This is a revived forest area with another one of our partners, Mount Puro Nature Reserve, just in Antipolo City. They too have been on a 20-year journey to reforestation, and right now I'm enjoying the forest that they have revived. And we hope to do that in the desert-like conditions of Zambales. So anyway, thank you again, guys, and I want to thank especially Rafi Ignacio for making this all possible. If ever you're in the Philippines, please let me know. We would love to bring you around and get to know the country better. Thank you and have a great day.
Cool. All right.
Oh, thank you, Raf. This is such a meaningful, program. Thank you for doing this. We're happy to see.
Thank you, Clang. This was great talking with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. By the way, in case you're interested, Clang's book, Food Holidays, is actually available on Filipino Food Crawl. She has documented heirloom recipes, and I guess that's her first book, Clang, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I know I've done several food, but the one on food, focused on food.
Focused on food. So yeah, in case you want to check it out, it's online. So thank you so much, everybody, and I'll see you in the next chat.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Have a good night.